They say the most dangerous stories are the ones you bury inside. The ones that haunt you in the quiet moments and twist your soul when you're alone at night. I never thought I'd say this out loud, let alone to a stranger. But here it goes. My name's Ethan. I'm 26 now, living just outside of Seattle. Graphic designer by trade. Pretty regular life, at least on the surface. But this story is the reason I haven't slept through a full night in over 2 years. This is the story I've never told anyone. I call it, my friend's mom said, "You always make me laugh, even when I shouldn't." It started innocently. Isn't that how the worst things always begin? Back then, I was 24, just hired at this mid-sized marketing firm. New guy, hungry to prove myself, working 10-hour days in a cubicle with bad coffee and fluorescent lights that made your skin look like hospital wallpaper. The boss, Drew, one of those silver-haired, ex-frat boys who still thought happy hour was a religion, threw a Friday mixer to break the ice. I didn't drink much. I was still anxious from my first week. But Drew introduced me to someone that night who'd change everything. "Ethan, this is Caroline," he said, clapping me on the back. She used to be my creative director before she took a little detour. I turned, and there she was, mid-40s maybe, elegant, not loud or flashy, but the kind of woman who could walk into a room and quietly own it. Black dress, laugh like velvet over fire. She looked me up and down, not rudely, just curious. "So you're the newbie who designed that skateboard ad," she said. "I liked it. Thanks," I mumbled, trying not to overthink my posture. I was aiming for edgy but clean. "Well, you landed on charmingly rebellious," she said, smiling with just one side of her mouth. "Kind of like you." I laughed awkwardly. That's when she added it, almost in a whisper. "You always make me laugh, even when I shouldn't." I didn't know what she meant. We just met. But something in her eyes told me she wasn't just talking about the ad, or the joke I'd made. It wasn't until a few weeks later that I found out the truth. Caroline was my coworker Blake's mom. Blake, my buddy from the design team, same age, played FIFA with me during breaks, laughed at my dumb impressions of Drew. The guy who once told me his parents divorced when he was 12 but still saw each other civilly for birthdays. That made things messy, but not yet dangerous. We started talking. It was casual at first. She'd comment on my Instagram stories with a quick, nice shot, or a fire emoji. Then came the late-night chats. We never crossed a line, not really. Not physically, but emotionally. That line was already blurred. One night, after a particularly stressful pitch presentation, I was walking to my car when I got a text. Still awake. It was Caroline. Barely. "You. Wine and insomnia. Want to join?" I hesitated. I knew what it looked like. I knew the consequences. But I also knew I'd never felt so seen. She lived 20 minutes away. A minimalist condo tucked behind a bookstore, the kind of place that smelled like aged paper and rosemary. When I arrived, she opened the door in a loose gray sweater and a knowing smile. No lipstick, just raw, honest beauty. "I almost didn't come," I said. "I almost didn't invite you," she replied, handing me a glass of wine. "But here we are." We sat on the floor, talked, laughed, shared the kind of details you're supposed to save for relationships. How her marriage had died 5 years before it ended, how she missed being surprised by life, how she envied my age and hated it at the same time. And me? I told her things I hadn't even told my brother. About my dad's heart attack. About how I felt like a fraud every time I hit send on a new design. About how I never knew if I was living or just pretending to. Then she looked at me, eyes softer than anything I'd seen in years, and said, "You always make me laugh, Ethan, even when I shouldn't." We didn't kiss. We didn't touch. But I swear, something in me changed that night. The next day at work, I saw Blake in the break room. He was talking about planning a surprise birthday for his mom. "She's been kinda down lately," he said. "Says she feels invisible. You know how moms get. Invisible." That word hit me like a truck. That night, I told her we should stop, that we shouldn't keep talking, that it was unfair to Blake, to ourselves, to whatever this strange, addictive thing was between us. And she said, "You're right." But then she added, "Just not tonight, please." So I stayed. One last time. At least that's what I told myself. A week later, I got a call. From Blake. He sounded weird. Like someone had punched the wind out of him. "Dude," he said, "you were with my mom last weekend?" I froze. He continued, "I saw your hoodie in her car." There was a long pause. "I thought you were my friend, Ethan." I couldn't speak. Then came the words that still replay in my head like a record I can't scratch out. "She always said you made her laugh." I didn't realize how much. That's when everything started to fall apart. At work, Drew called me in and asked if there was something he should know. Blake stopped talking to me entirely. Caroline deleted her Instagram. And me? I was left standing in the middle of a storm I never meant to create, torn between guilt, longing, and a strange, aching love I couldn't explain. But the worst part? That wasn't the end. Because one night, a full month later, I got a letter slipped under my apartment door. No name, just handwriting I recognized immediately. The first line, "There's something I need to tell you, and you need to know before it's too late." The envelope smelled like her. Soft perfume, lavender and something deeper, like old cedarwood drawers or the inside of a book you only open when you can't sleep. I stared at it for hours before opening it. "Ethan," it began, "I've thought 1,000 times about calling, about explaining, about trying to untangle what we've done or haven't done, depending on how you define betrayal. But I couldn't risk hurting you more than I already have. That night we spent on my floor, that was real to me, probably the most honest I've been in years. But it was also wrong. You were right to walk away. Except, you should know something before you bury this story. There's more." I dropped the letter. My hands were shaking. My breath caught somewhere in my throat like a scream I couldn't let out. She'd written that a few weeks ago, according to the postmark. But it only reached me now. I flipped the page. "Do you remember that story I told you? About how my marriage ended 5 years too late?" She wrote, "There's a reason. My husband, Blake's father, had another family, another life, in Portland, for over a decade. And Blake doesn't know. The man he idolizes, the reason he resents me, was never the father he thought he had. And I didn't tell him, because I wanted him to hold onto at least one version of love he could believe in. So yes, what happened between you and me, it was a mistake. But it was also the first time in years I felt like a woman again, not just a mother or an ex-wife or a ghost. And if I crossed lines, it's because I forgot where they were drawn. Don't forgive me, but understand me, please. Caroline." I sat there on my floor, letter crumpled, glass of bourbon untouched beside me. Her voice echoing in my mind like a confession whispered in a dream you can't wake up from. I couldn't decide what I felt more, anger, sadness, or longing. Because here's the thing, she wasn't the villain in this story, and neither was I. We were two broken people who collided at the wrong moment, like sparks in a dry forest. Everything after that was inevitable. A few days passed. Then Blake came back to work. He avoided me, of course. But that Wednesday around 5:30, I caught him by the elevator. "Hey," I said, "can we talk?" He looked like he wanted to say no, but something in my voice must have cracked enough to earn a nod. We walked outside, down the block, into the parking garage. I didn't defend myself. I didn't make excuses. I just said, "I'm sorry for everything." He stared at the ground for a long time. "I just don't get it," he whispered. "Why her? Out of all people?" And I wanted to tell him about how she listened, how she made me feel alive in a way no one had before, how her laughter filled spaces in me I didn't know were hollow. But I didn't. Instead, I said, "Because she reminded me of something I thought I lost." That night, I took the letter and drove to the lake where Caroline once told me she used to go when she felt lost. I stood there under the moonlight, wind cutting through my jacket, and I read her words again. And I realized something. This wasn't a love story. It was a ghost story. Two people haunted by their pasts, grasping for warmth in the middle of a cold chapter neither of us wanted to be written into. Then came the final twist. 2 months later, I got a call. From a blocked number. It was Caroline. "Don't hang up," she said. Her voice cracked from crying. "I'm not," I whispered. "I'm leaving Seattle," she said. "For real this time. Going back to Montreal. Starting over." Pause. "I just needed you to know. I'm pregnant." I stopped breathing. Words evaporated from my tongue. "But it's not yours," she added quickly. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. It's complicated. Just like everything else with me." "But Ethan," her voice softened. I never stopped thinking about that night on the floor. Not because of what almost happened, but because of what didn't. And with that, the line went dead. No goodbye. No closure. Just static. And that was the last time I heard from Caroline. But sometimes, when I pass that bookstore or scroll past an old photo, I still hear her laugh. That half laugh, half confession that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't so invisible either. Months passed. The world moved forward. Emails, deadlines, small talk, all the stuff we call life, kept piling up like snow over a frozen lake. But underneath, something still stirred. A name, a voice, a feeling I couldn't drown no matter how far I tried to swim from it. Caroline was gone, but she hadn't left me. Not really. The hardest part wasn't the guilt. It wasn't the confusion. It was not knowing where she was now, not knowing if she had that child, not knowing if she ever looked back the way I did. From the middle of some ordinary day, whispering my name like a prayer she was ashamed to say out loud. I tried dating. Once, maybe twice, but every time I sat across from someone new, trying to smile and be charming and normal, I felt like a man pretending to live someone else's life, a role I hadn't auditioned for. No one saw me the way she did, not the work version of me, not the polished, eager to please Ethan, just me. Then, about 9 months after that final call, a letter arrived. No return address. Just a pale blue envelope with my name handwritten in the corner. Inside was a small photo of a baby, swaddled in a yellow blanket, big dark eyes, that same half smile that used to flicker across Caroline's face when she was holding back a secret. Taped to the back of the photo was a note. I named her Elia, Hebrew for God has answered. Don't worry, she's not yours, but she's mine, and that's enough. Thank you for reminding me I was still capable of feeling something real. Love always. See, I pressed the photo to my chest and let the tears come. Not from heartbreak, not from regret, from something else. Grief, maybe, not just for what we lost, but for the pieces of ourselves we gave away just to survive for a little while longer. That same week, I got promoted at work. New title, bigger office, corner view. But as I sat there, looking out over the city, the same skyline she once said made her feel too small to be broken. I realized I hadn't designed anything meaningful in months. Everything felt hollow. So I did something crazy. Quit. Sold my lease. Gave away the furniture. Took everything I had saved and booked a one-way ticket to Montreal. No expectations. No plan. Just hope. I didn't even know if I'd find her. But some stories aren't meant to be finished. They're meant to be found. I didn't see her in the city right away. Weeks went by, then a month. But one afternoon, while wandering through old Montreal, cobblestone streets, early autumn breeze, I turned a corner and saw her. She was standing outside a second-hand bookstore, holding Elia, and laughing. She turned, as if she knew I'd be there, as if time had waited patiently for us to rewrite the ending. "Ethan," she whispered. I stepped closer. "You found me," she said. I smiled. "I think I was always meant to." We didn't kiss. We didn't run into each other's arms. There was no music, no fade to black. Just a quiet moment between two people who had finally made peace with their past. And maybe, just maybe, were ready to write a new chapter. Final reflection. I used to think love was about timing. That right person, wrong time meant it could never work. But now I know the truth. Love isn't about perfect timing. is about courage. The courage to feel something even when it terrifies you. To be vulnerable in the middle of your own chaos. To risk ruining everything just for a chance at something real. Caroline showed me that. And even if we never end up together, even if life pulls us apart again, I'll never forget what it meant to be truly seen, if only for a moment. Because sometimes the most powerful love stories are the ones that don't end in forever. They end in understanding, and that's enough.